August 27, 2010 was a day of great celebration for all Kenyans. I remember myself, I was seated at home like millions of Kenyans, watching as our president, Mwai Kibaki, lifted up the Constitution. And with that, great celebrations, ululations, and at that time, as a Kenyan, I felt maybe we are heading somewhere. It signified the end of corruption for us. It signified the end of poverty for us. It signified leadership and integrity in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We were at last going to hold our leaders to account. It brought us devolution. For the first time, we would have governors, MCAs. We expected devolution, health services to come closer to us, agriculture, water, and so many more. But most importantly, there was an aspect of including the public in all matters of decision making, especially on our resources. And this brought about the core principle of public participation in Kenya. So that was 2010. In 2013, we had devolution kick in, and counties were formed, all manners of legislation was passed. But the question we ask ourselves today, 10 years later, where are we with public participation? Is your view as Wanjiko shaping the destiny of your county or country? Are you included? Is your input making a difference? Is your county making efforts to engage you as public in matters decision making? And for us, when we are doing these videos, we want to reflect on two things. One is the letter of the Constitution, and two is the spirit of the Constitution. By spirit, I mean what was the intent of the Constitution when we passed it? What was our intent as Wanjiko when we said we wanted to be included in decision making? What was the spirit? Now, looking at the letter, we will dispense with the letter very fast. Now, for the letter, this means the law. So is it an issue of the law? I don't think so. Because when we look at the Constitution, this Constitution, Article 201A, is very clear. And at times it's good to refer and read so that I'm not reading my own things. So Article 201A says, the following principles shall guide all aspects of public finance in the Republic. There shall be openness and accountability, including public participation in financial matters. That is the Constitution. Let's see more. So right here, we have the acts, the County Government Acts. Again, you go to the County Government Acts, all the way from Section 87, where we have principles of citizen participation in counties, and goes all the way to Section 101, which says institutional framework for civic education. Subject to Section 100, county legislation shall provide the requisite institutional framework for purposes of facilitating and implementing civic education programs under this part. So again, the county governments have a clear guideline as to what they need to do in terms of public participation and civic education. Keep it away. Then we go further. The Ministry of Devolution came up with guidelines to guide our counties. And they had a big book, right? So the Ministry of Devolution came up with a big book, and they called it County Public Participation Guidelines. So again, if your county is not carrying out public participation and civic education, do they still have an excuse? Can they still claim they don't have guidelines as to how to carry out this? So they did a big book. Then they did some smaller ones that are simplified. They even had the time to do different colors. It's the same book, different colors. And most importantly, when you look at the first pages, it's very clear that we have public participation embedded in all aspects of decision making. When you go to page 4, there is something called phase 1 before public participation, what your county government needs to do or your duty bearers. Phase 2 during public participation, and phase 3 after public participation. So there's a before, during, and after of what they need to do. So that's the Ministry of Devolution. Then again, Ministry of Devolution developed a civic education curriculum, a 13-week program. So again, does your government, county or national, have an excuse as to why they are not carrying out civic education before calling for public participation? So again, there's a program that the Ministry of Devolution developed. We end there. We come down to my county of Nyeri. The county government of Nyeri has the Nyeri County Public Participation Act 2015. It's accessible on the website and you can download it, look at it, and see what is expected of our duty bearers. But also the Directorate of Civic Education and Public Participation in Nyeri County developed a simplified guideline. It's so simple. It has about 11 pages. So as I dispense of these documents and legislation, is it then an issue of the lack of laws, the lack of the letter, the lack of guidelines? I say no. So in matters of the letter, we dispense with that. So the problem is not a lack of laws. It is said Kenya has many laws. That is not where the problem is. A problem is how we interpret these laws, and at the end of the day, how we implement what was expected. And now we look at the spirit, the intent of the law. What exactly did Wanjiku aspire to when we said we wanted to be involved in all manners of decision making when it comes to resources? Our intent as Wanjiku was that our government would engage us in all manners of deliberations. Now, at this point, we ask ourselves as Wanjiku wa Kenya, we have the letter, so the problem is not there. So, is your government today, 10 years later, involving you in decision making in terms of resources? And when I say this, I mean at national level and at county government level. Is your MCA involving you in decision making? Is your governor involving you? Is your MP? Is your women rep? Is your senator? Is your president involving you in decision making? 10 years later, we ask ourselves, then if your input is not shaping your government, then how are government decisions made?